Good morning, everybody. Happy Tuesday. We have an amazing show for everybody today. What do we have, Krystal?
Indeed, we do. A plethora of big stories to bring you this morning. Of course, we're going to update you on the Omicron virus and variant and everything that Joe Biden said about that, where we seem to be headed. Few updates for you about exactly what is going on there. Jack Dorsey stepping down as head of CEO of Twitter. A little bit troubling, his replacement, yes. Some of the comments that have been made. So we'll get into that. Chris Cuomo under major pressure at CNN as new revelations about just how directly he was involved in his brother's defense, how he leveraged his media connections to try to help him with the cover-up. I'm not sure CNN knew that all of this was going on, so they have been forced to release a statement. First time that they've really had much to say at all about what's going on there. So we'll give you all of those details. Also, big news out of Bessemer, Alabama. You'll recall workers at the Amazon warehouse there, they had been trying to unionize. That effort had been defeated, but all along, those involved with the organizing effort said, hey, this was not on the up and up. Amazon cheated, and this was unfair practices. Well, the NLRB at this point has agreed with them. They are calling for a new election there down in Bessemer, Alabama. So obviously that is huge news. Also, our great friend of the show, Dr. Fauci, making some comments, quite eyebrow raising. We will get to that in a moment. But we wanted to start with the very latest on the new Omicron variant. Joe Biden making some comments yesterday about his plans to deal with that virus. Let's take a listen to that.
The best protection, I know you're tired of hearing me say this, the best protection against this new variant or any of the variants out there, the ones we've been dealing with already, is getting fully vaccinated and getting a booster shot. Most Americans are fully vaccinated, but not yet boosted. If you're 18 years or over and got fully vaccinated before June the 1st, go get the booster shot today. They're free, and they're available at 80,000 locations, coast to coast. A fully vaccinated booster person is the most protected against COVID. Do not wait. Go get your booster if it's time for you to do so. And if you are not vaccinated, now's the time to get vaccinated and take your children to be vaccinated. Every child age 5 or older can get safe, effective vaccines now.
I like the way he calls them fully vaccinated booster people. So a couple things. The totality of effectively what he's saying here is in addition to the travel ban, which even some of his allies and the doctor we talked to yesterday said, this isn't really going to do anything. This is more theater than anything else. He's effectively saying, look, we're not looking at any lockdowns, but we want you to get vaccinated and we want you to get boosters. This caught both of our attention yesterday.
Very much so.
Because prior to yesterday, the CDC's guidance was that adults can get a booster, but that only people who are elderly should get a booster. Well, that guidance has now officially been changed because of this new variant. Let's throw that tear sheet up on the screen. The CDC strengthened its booster recommendations as worries mount over the Omicron variant. Prompted by growing concerns, the CDC and Center for Disease Control and Prevention on Monday said all American adults should get booster doses of the available coronavirus vaccines. Adults aged 18 and older should get a booster shot when they are 6 months past the initial immunization with Pfizer or Moderna, or 2 months after the single-shot J&J vaccine, which has proven to be somewhat less effective than the 2-dose Pfizer and Moderna mRNA versions. The CDC had previously said Americans over age 50, as well as those ages 18 and older living in long-term care facilities, should get booster shots, while other adults may decide to do so based on their individual risk. So shift in language here, but also significant. Now you have a sort of blanket encouragement for all adults to get their booster. Full disclosure, I did get mine over the weekend. I was taking my kid to get his first jab and decided I may as well go ahead and get my booster as well. I had very minimal side effects, just so you guys know, full transparency. But this does mark a shift in terms of how the CDC is talking about boosters. And this is something we tracked for a while.
Yes.
Because frankly, there isn't a lot of evidence that boosters are particularly needed at this point.
Only for elderly people. For elderly people, it seems to work pretty well.
Right. And so, one of the things that has been a little bit misleading about some of the media presentation of the vaccine effectiveness is, while yes, breakthrough infections are a thing, and the efficacy with regards to getting COVID at all does seem to wane somewhat over time, you still have a lot of protection against severe hospitalization and death.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
So, and I actually, it's bothered me that they haven't front-loaded with that information, because ultimately you want people to know that the vaccines do in fact work, and it is worth going out and getting them.
Yeah, I think that this is, the communication around this has been a mess, and this is what we flagged on this, which is the president came out and said everybody should get a booster. Now, at the time that he made that statement, that was not a recommendation from the CDC, leading me and many other people to be like, hold on a second, did Biden just go ahead of what CDC guidance was? Then the CDC hours later changes guidance. Now, the reason I'm dubious and skeptical on this is that, remember the original booster guidance from the CDC and also from the FDA? We had those two top scientists at the FDA resign specifically over Biden and the White House getting over its skis and recommending boosters for all Americans. The two scientists resigned. Then the CDC came out and said, okay, we're going to revise our guidance on the booster. The official guidance is it's only for people who are 50 years and older, and also people who are 18 plus who work in a high risk environment. That was the only eligibility. 3 weeks later, they change it. November 19th, they came out and they changed the guidance to everyone is eligible for a booster, as in you can go get one if you want, but you should only get one, should get one if you're 50 years or older, plus 18, and you work in a high-risk environment. So all of this has changed within the span of a month and a half. Now, look, I understand, my public health friends will be like, yeah, but Omicron, the variant and changes, but you have to make this case very publicly to people, or they're gonna be like, I don't understand what's happening. And that seems to be the real problem. I completely agree with you. Look, double vaccinated, yes, you can get a breakthrough infection. It happened to me. It does, decrease your odds of it, like population-wide and all of that. And it's gonna, dramatically protect you from hospitalization and death. For a lot of the people who are worried about side effects and all of that, myocarditis is the one that is cited a lot. Your risk is actually much higher from getting myocarditis, even when you're young, from actually getting COVID, specifically long COVID, and especially those people who are a little bit older, 35, 40 or whatever, and above. If you look at the risks, it's something you should decide for yourself, but it's something that I think we should address here on the show. Yeah. Hospitalization and death, and then, look, there's risks from getting COVID, and, there's a quote-unquote risk. There are side effects, of course, from also getting the vaccine when you give it to hundreds of millions of people. You should compare those two things side by side. It's pretty clear, which side I personally think you should fall on.
Can I also say, on the booster thing, I decided to get it because I don't want to get COVID.
Yeah,
even though I wasn't worried about
it's not fun.
I wasn't worried about being in the hospital. I wasn't worried about dying, but I, just like I get the flu shot, I didn't really want to get COVID. So that's why I got it. But I do want to say, for people who got the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, you really should get a second one. Because that one, first of all, almost all of the protection against getting COVID goes away. You still do have significant protection against hospitalization and death, but it is significantly less than with the mRNA vaccine. So if you got the J&J vaccine, you should go get another one, because that one just hasn't held up as well as the other two have. Another thing that just broke, at least I just saw this morning, which you should take with a million grains of salt, because we're talking about a pharmaceutical executive who has a financial interest in everybody getting boosters and getting more vaccines. But the CEO of Moderna, which of course makes what has turned out to be the most effective vaccine, is saying that he doesn't think that the vaccines are going to hold up all that well against Omicron. Now, that is speculation at this point, because it's just too early to say, but I'll just read to you what he is saying. He said the high number of mutations on the spike protein with Omicron, which is, of course, what the virus uses to infect human cells, and the rapid spread of their variant in South Africa suggested that the current crop of vaccines may need to be modified next year. He said, quote, "There is no world I think, where the effectiveness is the same level we had with the Delta variant. I think it's going to be a material drop. I just don't know how much because we need to wait for the data. But all the scientists I've talked to are like, this is not going to be good. That's what someone who has a direct financial interest in us having boosters and having vaccines, a new vaccine every year for a new variant every year. That's what he's saying. That doesn't mean it's wrong. That just means you should take that into account. And on that note, while the stock markets dropped and oil futures dropped and there was financial fallout for most companies because of the Omicron variant, and by the way, these comments new from the Moderna CEO has sent the market even lower. Well, it hasn't been bad news for everyone, has it? Let's take a listen to an interview with the Pfizer CEO on CNBC.
Do you see this happening every year? We either get a regular booster of the same vaccine or a slightly different vaccine every year to deal with what we're seeing with these mutations? Is that what you foresee? It's almost like for Pfizer, you'd be selling these things every year. Not that you want to do that. I'm sure you're not hoping for that, but it'd be almost like an annuity for Pfizer.
Yes, I did make a projection months ago that the most likely scenario it is that we will need, after the third dose, annual revaccinations against COVID for multiple reasons, because of the immunity that will be waning, because of the virus that I'm sure will be maintained around the world for the years to come, and also because of the need of variants that will emerge. I'm more confident right now that this will be the case than I was when I made the projection. I think we are going to have an annual revaccination. I don't know how we're going to call it, but will be an annual revaccination, and that should be able to keep us really safe.
I mean, you love the just nakedness of the financial press, like the stock
I'm
prices.
sure you don't want this to happen while the stock price is right next.
This is like an annuity for Pfizer, right? With the stock prices right there along the side. And listen, as we talked about yesterday, the ideal, most profitable situation for these companies is to make a vaccine that actually works so people want it, and then sell it at premium prices to the rich world and keep vast swaths of the world unvaccinated so that we do continue to churn out variant after variant after variant, which is why it would be so important if the Biden administration would stop just talking about lifting patent protections and actually put some muscle behind it, get behind the existing proposal at the World Trade Organization, or write a new proposal, and most importantly, put their muscle behind pressuring Germany in particular to get on board with this as well, because it is unconscionable that you only have 6 or 7% of Africa vaccinated, that the poor world has basically been left out of this entirely is just absolutely disgusting.
Yeah, and I would also say that a lot of that needs to be done in order to reclaim a lot of ground that has been given to people who are very skeptical of the vaccine. Because you hear this. I mean, what are you supposed to think? The guy's literally saying that you need a shot every year. 3 months ago, that was considered a conspiracy theory in the United States, that you're going to have boosters over and over again. And that's actually something that is cited by a lot of people who don't want the vaccine, because they're like, look, even if I get it, then I still might get it, and then I might have to keep getting one over and over again, and I simply don't want to, or, risk compound year over year. I get it. Like, I completely understand. And, why should you trust the CEO of Pfizer? And especially when they have a direct financial incentive in order to do so. And then you look at what the government is doing, which is essentially embracing this policy now. Who is actually running the show? Is it the actual scientists who we've seen change their minds on booster shots 3 times in the last 8 weeks? Or is it the CEO? I mean, we need to reclaim some sort of public trust. And that's part of the problem. I just think this is completely ridiculous. And, I'll put my cards on the table. I'm deeply skeptical. And I found in my own experience, I'm not getting good information. Like, I got, 2 doses of Moderna and then I got COVID. Do I need a booster shot? There's no official guidance on that, because natural immunity is not currently recognized by the CDC whatsoever in terms of its guidance on whether you should get shots or not. And look, I realize how I'm beginning to sound, but this is somebody who went out and sought out the vaccine as early as possible. And then also you see this and you say, okay, well, I'm a young man, got 2 doses of Moderna, also got COVID, have natural immunity. Do I really need a booster shot every every single year? Or, and this is from a population-wide basis, what if we have it such that boosters, instead of being recommended necessarily for everybody, we focus on the ultimate metric, in my opinion, which matters the most, hospitalization and death. If we can reduce that every single year, and every year, let's say that we do have a booster shot every year, and it'll be like the flu vaccine, which is that, this particular strain of flu. Well, look, everyone should get a flu shot, but in general, like, who do they really need to be given to? The elderly, and for the flu is actually much more deadly to children.
Yeah.
But with COVID in particular, you could say, okay, if you're old, then yes, like, you should probably get a booster shot, maybe every year, just to make sure that you're gonna be okay. Do you have to recommend it though for everybody else? This embraces, to me, COVID zero type thinking, which of course he has the direct financial incentive in pushing. An endemic model would not push it towards this. It would say the option is available to those who are in a high risk category, immunocompromised, etc. But for everybody else, yeah, you're probably gonna get some strain of COVID at some point in your life. I think everybody just needs to accept that right now. And the real question is around mitigation and making sure that hospitalization and death is as low as possible.
But let me say, with your point that probably everyone's going to get COVID at some point in their life, if you have been vaccinated, that is a much less risky and potentially deadly scenario for you than if you are unvaccinated. So look, these companies are not good actors. No. And the fact that we, are dependent on people who have invested financial interest in this is gross. And the incredibly unfortunate side effect of that is, in part, it does fuels true conspiracy theories about how they want to just make money, but it also fuels false conspiracy theories about the vaccines themselves being nefarious or not working. When we have seen through, hundreds of millions of trials around the world at this point,
actually.
They are very safe, minimal risk, and highly effective, especially when it comes to hospitalization and death. And the biggest crime that they are committing is by not making this a public good so that it could be more widely available ultimately to the globe. That is really, it really is an unconscionable, immoral situation. And I think also gets to this core issue that, I've had with our healthcare system for a long time, which is that when profit is at the center, that is the core value rather than health. So this should always, at the beginning we had all this like, oh, we're in it together and World War II style mobilization effort, et cetera, et cetera. Bullshit. This should have been a public good. This should have been something where, we make it as cheaply available to the world as possible. But that isn't, in the interest of Moderna and Pfizer and other companies involved. And lest we forget that you, the US taxpayer, funded and created and helped develop this technology too. Yeah. So it's not like these companies were white knights who saved us all. They leveraged research that had been publicly funded and ongoing for years. And we gave them big upfront payments. We moved mountains to make sure that the development happened when the trials weren't, they couldn't find enough diverse participants for the trials. We made sure they had that and the parts they needed. And we went on boarded trains to get those parts. The US taxpayer is responsible for these vaccines, and we should be the ones having the say over who it is made available to in the world. Just one more piece, this great reporting from Li Fong over at The Intercept about just how nefarious these corporate actors are and how we never should, trust them in terms of their interest here. Yeah. Pfizer is now lobbying to thwart whistleblowers from exposing corporate fraud. They are among the big pharma companies trying to block legislation strengthening whistleblowers' ability to report. This law, and this is really interesting because this is actually a bipartisan effort led in part by Chuck Grassley, a Republican, of course, out of Iowa. And so this law has historically returned $67 billion to the government. Whistleblowers have successfully helped uncover wrongdoing by military contractors, banks, and pharmaceutical companies. But this law protecting whistleblowers who are exposing corporate fraud, this has been eroded over time, in particular by a recent Supreme Court decision. And this to me is nuts. But it's effectively what the Supreme Court decision said is that if the company has any ongoing contracts with the government, then we don't believe your fraud claims. Because surely the government wouldn't do business with a company that was engaged in fraud.
Yeah, I've never met a defense contractor that didn't engage in fraud. So
Exactly. Like, this is insane. But that's what the Supreme Court decided, and this is something else we've, of course, talked about on the show, how the main value and main thing that advocates of some of these justices have looked for is that they will be reliable allies for corporate America. So Chuck Grassley and others, including Republicans and Democrats, have been trying to update this law. Pfizer and some of their big pharma allies have been standing with them to lobby against it aggressively.
Yeah, and I'll just end with, with Matt Stoller. I referenced his tweet, but I wanted to make sure you guys saw it all today. Let's put it up there on the screen, where he says, quote, "New variants from unvaccinated areas that force us to get boosters is literally the business model of big pharma." And I think that, Krystal, that's what you continue to hammer home. And I think that we should all really realize here, which is that a lot of this with the booster shot, its efficacy, around the guidance, around the financial interest and more, I don't think that we're having the correct conversation around it. I think it's both, either resetting and putting expectations for people who are really afraid of COVID, that this is something that will have to be done population-wide over and over again, when that's probably not realistic in terms of a US population-wide basis. 2, feeding and directly showing that these people want boosters forever for financial interest. And then 3, where the guidance around it changes all the time, and I think just moves us away from where I would say the center of gravity of American public opinion is, but also just science generally. So look, it's the most honest conversation we could try and have on this, because it's a very fraught topic. I bet a lot of people at home are freaked out and are like, I don't know what to do. Should I get one? Should I not? I get messages from people all the time. Be like, here's my specific case. By the way, I'm not a doctor, so don't ask me. Please stop asking me whether your boyfriend should get the second jab or whatever.
Look, and it's early days with Omicron. We really don't know much there. And I'm going to wait till, actual scientists evaluate this, not Moderna's CEO.
Exactly.
But I guess to sum it all up, you are correct to think that these pharmaceutical giants are nefarious actors, but their game isn't creating a vaccine that doesn't work and then making you get it. The game is to have the rich world be the piggy bank, charge premium prices, and then allow these variants to circulate. And just as Matt Stoller said, in the unvaccinated world, that is how they end up with the largest possible profit. And so that is the angle and the conspiracy that you should be very concerned about and very leery of.
That's right.
Hey guys, thanks so much for watching.
That's right. Just as a reminder, you can become a premium subscriber today. Watch the full show completely uncut, our reactions to each other's monologues. You get to listen to it. You get to ask us questions, all that good stuff. Link is right there in the description or at breakingpoints.com.
Best of all, great way to say screw you to the mainstream media.